Okay, a warm welcome back. Eastwood has gone into the dark, and I'm delighted to say that we have on a friend of our show. He's been on a couple of times and has been always absolutely superb with us. Nima Roots. Is it okay if I say Nima Roodsari, or should I say your full name?
No, Tavallaey is I mean, it's two surnames, so it's Nima Tavallaey Roodsari. But yeah, I mean, whatever's easier for you to pronounce, mate. That's fine. I'm all right. I'm easy. I'm not going to be
That's
offended, I promise.
that's extremely understanding. As someone with an unusual name,
Well, it's just
I
the
don't
kind
play
of
that way.
person it's just the kind of guy I am. What can I
Yeah,
say?
yeah, yeah. Nima, I'm going to start to ask you right away. A couple of things. You've been very, very upfront in terms of with social, political, and sporting views. So I want to start off and just give you a moment to speak about the situation surrounding the World Cup in Qatar. We've been discussing it, a few times even tonight as well. You might have seen it. Are we seeing the dying embers or even the growing flames of imperialism or colonialism at play? Or is it just a fact that, maybe we should all try to understand each other just a little bit better?
I think it's exactly that. The old world, the so-called rules-based order, is dying. And the Anglo-Saxon Empire is at its dying moments, and there's a new world order. There's a new world order emerging, and it's a new world order that is based on multipolarity after 30 years of unipolarity, and we see that in football as well. It's the very notion. I mean, if you were to listen to any Western media outlet, mainstream Western media outlet, you'd think that corruption in FIFA was invented when Russia and Qatar got the World Cup. Before, no problems. After, no problems. That's just not the case. If you don't contextualize, as they don't do, then you'd watching them and listening to them, you'd think that. But that's just not how it is. We know that FIFA is an incredibly corrupt organization from pretty much from the day it was from its very inception to today. No one's denying that. No one's denying that Qatar got the World Cup through bribery. But, well, didn't the Germany in 2006? What about every other tournament as well then? Or did that just happen in Qatar? And as for who Qatar are and the Qatari government, I draw a very strong line between the government of a country and the people of that country and the culture of that country. And I think it's very dangerous to equate those two with one another. And what do I mean by that? I mean that Qatar, the Qatari government, the Qatari state, is an invention of the British Empire. Remember that empire on which the sun never set? That's when it was invented. And they have, because of its geographical strategic position, and because of its an importance in military operations nonetheless, together with the oil and everything else, they've sold weapons. They still sell weapons. I mean, you'd think, based on the reporting in the mainstream media in the West, that Qatar is not an ally. Qatar is an ally of the West militarily. Many people may not know this, but the entire U.S. military command, the military HQ during the illegal invasion of Iraq, which resulted in the death of 1 million people, all of that, the entire military command was stationed in Qatar. Same thing when they set Libya on fire and turned it into this failed banana republic. It was from Qatar they did these things. Now, I think as human beings, our brains should be able to process several pieces of information at once. No one is defending what Qatar being a dictatorship, or that it's policies on women's rights, on gay rights for migrant workers. That's no one's debate. No one's even defending that remotely. What I'm simply saying is that, well, we know of the reports that migrant workers, regardless anywhere on this earth, have a very good working conditions. And I mean, just was it 2018 when I think it was the Daily Mail that reported that the British kits were made by people who made 21p an hour in a third world country. I mean, this is what I mean. Contextualize. But they don't want to do that, because if they do contextualize that, they will have to admit that they are actually military allies of that same government who they claim to hate so much. And that's not, that's not something they're willing to do. And so instead, they want to hammer home the point about, Muslim, and of course, them Qatari people being Muslim and brown, and the racial aspect of this is huge as well. So they hammer home those points. And I mean, the last week alone, the amount of stupid things I've seen, just lies. I mean, it's as if you need to lie and invent lies to criticize the Qatari state for. Remember that notion of Qatar bribing the players in Ecuador? Well, we just saw how well that went. Didn't go so well. Maybe the check didn't clear. I mean, come on. Can we stop? Can we please be serious here? Or which prompted actually the president of the Ecuadorian League to come out and say, an idiot says something stupid and we have to spend hours to talk about it. End quote.
Is it, I suppose, I get the point entirely. Migrant workers across the globe, wherever they are by the very nature of being migrant workers, generally in the worst position. Is it maybe, and I don't think it's solely to do with Qatar, is there a latent sense for us all that we're now more aware of it, that we're more conscious of the migrant workers here in this instance? We probably were quite conscious of them in South America. We were less conscious in other tournaments. But then in the back of our head, there may be that level of ability to go, they're migrant workers who are dying for the sake of us watching a football tournament. And perhaps on some level there is, for some people, that's now creeping in and going, because I know I find myself watching more and more sports that are coming from Saudi Arabia, that are coming from Yas Island, has a huge amount of UFC. I like combat sports, just Nima to explain, I watch a huge amount of combat sports. And I think what galls me perhaps with Qatar, and it's not the lack of separation of state and tournament, but it's the feeling that the state have an overall control on everything to do with the tournament, and we are basically feeding migrant workers who may be getting paid, etc., and that might be good, but we're basically doing it for our own entertainment in a very corrupt tournament.
Yeah,
absolutely, we are. But my issue is that it's, well, how is that news? I mean,
but perhaps the fact that we're highlighting it rather than just...
No, I get that, but the problem is that it's never highlighted. I mean, for Poland and Ukraine, when they held the Euros, at one building site, just one stadium, 8 people died. You'd have to dig online to find anything written and reported about that.
One of the things, Nima, that we did discuss though the last time was about the disinformation coming up to the Russian competition, that there were so many people. The big focus for Russia was hooliganism, and this time it's a different focus. There is always one story that the media will run with solely.
Did you the same? Racism and hooliganism was the same for Ukraine and Poland 2012, and it was well managed, well maintained, and it really was, the same as Russia managed their hooligan problem. Ukraine and Poland did the same.
I must say, I think the point though about the ally point is so important, and it's the same with Saudi Arabia. They're a military ally of the US, so
okay,
it's a very good point.
But just on that point, I mean, it's like, again, I don't have I've not said anything for the last 12 years when this entire machine has been going. I've been waiting for the context. I've been waiting for them to contextualize this. I've been waiting for them to bring up that actually maybe, look, we all know who the Qatari state and government are. What about if we don't sell them weapons anymore? What about if we don't prop them up anymore? What about, I mean, if you really, really care about these things, it feels to me the entire debate is like this, where they've created a Frankenstein's monster. The monster is loose, and instead of being pissed off with Dr. Frankenstein, they're virtue signaling against the monster. The monster doesn't care, and it's just absolutely. I mean, it makes no sense. There is no logic and coherence in this situation, and of course, just take the beer. This horrible outrage about the beer at the stadiums. Now, in France, in 2016, they did the same thing. They didn't sell beer at the stadium during games because, as it turns out, drunk people are difficult to manage and misbehave. I mean, who knew? Who knew?
Amazing.
I mean,
and that is solely down to it being a Muslim country.
Well,
That's
of course,
why
you see,
that's
this
such
is
an
what
easy one.
exactly. This is what it's because they're Muslim, and if they're gonna those dodgy dark Muslims, if they back out on this in the 11th hour, what are they gonna do? What are they gonna back out on as well? I mean, it's just, and then you have. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't want to do this, but then you go on Sky, Rupert Murdoch, Sky Sport, and I use this term seriously, internationally renowned village idiot, Kaveh Solhekol, standing there pretending like he's some sort of wartime correspondent, talking about how normal fans can't have a pint of beer, and doing his best EastEnders character impersonation whilst doing it to connect with the audience he's trying to entice. I mean, get out of here. It's like, who buys this bollocks? Excuse me.